At 2:17 in the morning, 7 months pregnant, Rachel Morgan discovered something on her husband's phone that made her blood run cold. A burner phone, hidden in his gym bag. Hundreds of messages to a woman named Kay. But that was not the worst part. The messages went back 3 years, all the way to the week of her first miscarriage. While she was bleeding and crying and grieving their lost baby, her husband was texting another woman. She was so depressed. I needed someone who made me feel alive. Rachel thought discovering the affair would be the worst moment of her life. She was wrong, because 6 months later, a detective would call her with news that turned betrayal into something far darker. Her husband had taken out a $200,000 life insurance policy on her. His search history included phrases like complications during childbirth and how long to wait after death to collect insurance. Marcus Morgan was not planning a divorce. He was planning a murder, and Rachel had just given birth to his child. What happens next will show you how one woman went from a shelter with nothing but her baby and her broken heart to standing in a courtroom watching her husband's mask finally shatter. This is the story of a wife who refused to disappear quietly. Value statement and lesson. This story carries one truth that every woman needs to hear. You do not need anyone's permission to save yourself. The courage is already inside you. You just have to find it, meaning. Rachel's journey is not just entertainment. It is a mirror for thousands of women who have been gaslit, manipulated, and made to feel crazy for trusting their own instincts. If you have ever stayed too long, left too late, or wondered if you were the problem, this story is your reminder. You were never the problem, and you were never as weak as they told you. The night Rachel Morgan discovered her marriage was a lie started like every other lonely night that month. She lay awake at 2:17 in the morning, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other reaching toward the empty pillow beside her. Marcus was working late again. Third time this week, fourth time if she counted Sunday. The baby kicked, a sharp jab beneath her ribs that made her wince. 7 months pregnant, and she still marveled at how something so small could feel so strong. She rubbed the spot gently, whispering words she had been saying a lot lately. Just us again tonight, little one. Sleep refused to come. It had been that way for weeks now, ever since Marcus started pulling away. Ever since his kisses became mechanical, his touches obligatory, his eyes distant even when he looked directly at her. She told herself it was stress, the promotion he was chasing, the economy, the pressure of becoming a father for the first time. She told herself a lot of things. Rachel reached for her phone out of habit, squinting against the harsh glow in the darkness. She meant to check the weather, maybe scroll through baby name lists like she did most sleepless nights. Instead, a notification caught her eye. Bank alert. Transaction approved. Rosewood Inn. $489. Her thumb hovered over the screen. The Rosewood Inn was a boutique hotel 40 minutes outside the city. She knew it because Marcus had taken her there for their 3rd anniversary, back when he still planned surprises, back when her smile was something he worked to earn. That hotel was nowhere near his office. Her heart began to pound, slow at first, then faster, a drumbeat of dread building in her chest. She checked the timestamp, 11:47 last night. While she was eating leftover pasta alone and watching home renovation shows, her husband was checking into a hotel. With trembling fingers, she typed a message. Hey babe, how is work going? The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. He was awake. Of course he was awake. Brutal. Might be here all night. Get some sleep. Love you. Rachel stared at those words until they blurred. Love you. He typed it so easily, so casually, like it cost him nothing, because maybe it did. She sat up slowly, legs swinging over the edge of the bed. The hardwood floor was cold beneath her bare feet. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the whisper of wind against the windows. Something was wrong. She had known it for months, felt it in the growing distance between them, in the way he flinched when she reached for his hand, in the excuses that multiplied like weeds in an untended garden. But knowing and seeing were different things. She walked to his closet, moving quietly, even though no one was home to hear her. His gym bag sat in the corner where he always left it, black and worn, smelling faintly of sweat and expensive cologne. She had never searched his things before. In 6 years of marriage, she had trusted him completely. But tonight, something pulled her forward, a voice she could not silence. Her hand found something hard beneath his workout clothes. A phone. Not his regular phone, which was undoubtedly wherever he was right now. A second phone, small and cheap, the kind sold at convenience stores. A burner phone. Rachel's fingers shook as she pressed the power button. No password. He was that confident she would never look. The messages loaded slowly, each one a knife sliding between her ribs. The contact name was simply K. Miss you already. Last night was incredible. She does not suspect anything. She is too busy being pregnant. I love you. Only you. Rachel scrolled backward, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. The messages went back months, years, all the way to a date that made her stomach lurch violently. The week of her first miscarriage. The worst week of her life. The week she spent bleeding and crying while Marcus held her and promised they would try again, that everything would be okay, that he was there for her. He had been there for her, and for someone named Kay. She was so depressed, one message read. I needed someone who made me feel alive. Rachel dropped the phone like it had burned her. Her knees hit the hardwood floor. She wrapped her arms around her belly, around the baby who did not know their father was a stranger, and she rocked back and forth in the darkness. No sounds came out. She had learned long ago to cry quietly. Foster care had taught her that. 18 years of being passed from home to home had taught her that tears were a private thing, a weakness others would exploit. But this pain was different. This was not the familiar ache of abandonment by strangers. This was betrayal by the one person she had trusted completely, the one person she thought would never leave. The front door opened at 6:14 in the morning. Rachel heard his footsteps, confident and unhurried, the walk of a man who believed he had gotten away with everything. She sat at the kitchen table, the burner phone in front of her face carefully blank. Marcus appeared in the doorway, tie loosened, hair slightly disheveled. He smiled when he saw her, that charming smile that had made her fall in love with him 7 years ago. Hey, babe. You are up early. Rachel did not smile back. Who is Kay? The silence that followed was deafening. She watched his face cycle through emotions. Shock first, then fear, then something calculating behind his eyes. Baby, I do not know what you are talking about. She slid the phone across the table. He stared at it like she had placed a live grenade between them. I found it in your gym bag, she said quietly. I read everything. His mask flickered. For a moment, she saw the real Marcus, the one who had been hiding behind charm and promises. Then the mask slipped back into place, and he laughed softly. Okay, look. He sat down across from her, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. It is not what you think. You have been sleeping with someone for 3 years, since my first miscarriage. He flinched. Baby, listen to me. I read the messages. Marcus, she is not even the first, is she? Kay is your fourth. Another flinch, deeper this time. Rachel, you need to calm down. This is not good for the baby. Do not, she whispered, and for the first time, her voice cracked. Do not use our child to manipulate me. He changed tactics then. shifting from denial to something worse. His face softened into false remorse. His eyes filled with tears that looked almost real. You are right. You are absolutely right. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But I love you, Rachel. I love our family. I will end it today. I will go to therapy. Whatever you need, she wanted to believe him. God help her. A part of her wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. She was pregnant and scared and alone, and the man in front of her had been her whole world for 6 years. But then he said the words that killed something inside her. Maybe if you had not let yourself go since the pregnancy, I would not have needed attention elsewhere. Rachel went very still. He did not even realize what he had done. He kept talking, something about stress and needs and how they could work through this together, but she had stopped listening. He had blamed her for his cheating, for his lies, for 3 years of betrayal. And in that moment, something shifted inside Rachel Morgan. The part of her that apologized for existing, that shrank to make others comfortable, that believed love required constant sacrifice, that part went quiet, and something stronger took its place. Rachel went to work the next morning because she did not know what else to do. She moved through the motions, answering emails and attending meetings and pretending the world had not ended 12 hours ago. But Maya Washington noticed. Maya always noticed. She sat 3 desks away in the accounting department, a single mother of 6-year-old twins who somehow managed to look put together despite running on coffee and sheer willpower. They had been work friends for 2 years, the kind who ate lunch together and complained about deadlines, but rarely talked about anything real. That changed at 11:30 when Maya appeared at Rachel's desk with 2 cups of tea and a look that said she was not leaving until she got answers. "You look like death," Maya said bluntly. "What happened?" Rachel opened her mouth to say nothing, to smile and deflect and pretend. But the words that came out were different. "Marcus is cheating on me. Has been for 3 years," Maya's face hardened. She grabbed Rachel's arm and steered her toward the stairwell, the only private space in their open floor plan office. "Tell me everything." So Rachel did. The hotel charge, the burner phone, the messages dating back to her miscarriage, and worst of all, the words Marcus had used to blame her. When she finished, Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something Rachel did not expect. "What he said to you, that thing about letting yourself go, my ex said the exact same thing. Word for word." Rachel blinked. "What?" "It is in the playbook." Maya's voice was flat. "Cheaters blame their partners. They make you feel crazy, make you doubt yourself, make you think if you had just been prettier, or thinner, or more attentive, they would not have strayed. It is textbook manipulation." The words hit Rachel like cold water. She had spent all night wondering what she had done wrong, how she had failed, why she was not enough. And here was Maya, telling her it was not about her at all. "If you..." "My ex cheated for 4 years," Maya continued. "I found out when the twins were 2. Stayed another 2 years trying to make it work because I thought that was what good mothers did. It only got worse. What happened? I left. Hardest thing I have ever done. Lost friends, lost money, almost lost my mind in the custody battle. But my kids have a mother who respects herself now. That is worth everything." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. "I do not know what to do." "You do not have to decide today," Maya squeezed her hand. "But promise me one thing. Open a bank account in your name only, at a different bank. Put some money there, just in case." "Why?" "Because I did not do that, and when I finally left, he had drained everything. I had to borrow money from my sister to hire a lawyer." Rachel absorbed this. The idea of preparing to leave felt like admitting defeat. But Maya's eyes held something Rachel recognized. The hard-earned wisdom of someone who had survived what she was just beginning. One more thing, Maya said. I did some digging after you told me about Kay. Asked around. Marcus is not exactly subtle at company events. Rachel's stomach dropped. What did you find? Kay is Kennedy Shaw. Works in his department. But here's the thing, Rachel. She is not his first. Maya paused. She is his fourth. The stairwell seemed to spin. Fourth, there was an assistant named something or other about 5 years ago. A client 2 years before that. And someone else, I could not get a name. But the pattern is clear. He has been cheating our entire marriage, Rachel whispered. Probably before you even said I do. Rachel sank onto the concrete steps, her hand pressed against her belly. The baby kicked, oblivious to the destruction happening in their mother's heart. What do I do, Maya? I am 7 months pregnant. I have no family. He is all I have. No. Maya crouched down to meet her eyes. He is what you thought you had. There is a difference. She wrote a phone number on a scrap of paper and pressed it into Rachel's palm. Patricia Holloway, family lawyer, works at the legal aid clinic downtown. She helped me when I could not afford anyone else. Call her, just to know your options. Rachel looked at the number, then at Maya. Why are you helping me? We barely know each other outside work. Maya smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Because someone helped me when I was where you are, and because I remember what it felt like to think I was completely alone. You are not alone, Rachel. Not anymore. That afternoon, Rachel opened a savings account at a bank across town. She transferred $500, all she could move without Marcus noticing. It felt like nothing. It felt like everything. She called Patricia Holloway on her lunch break, speaking quickly in a bathroom stall, so no one would hear. The lawyer listened without interrupting, then said 6 words that Rachel would remember for the rest of her life. Document everything. We will figure this out. That night, Rachel came home to find Marcus cooking dinner. He had bought flowers, her favorites, white roses with pink edges. The table was set with candles. Soft music played from the living room speaker. Hey, beautiful, he said, pulling her into a hug she did not return. I have been thinking about everything. I am so sorry. I made a reservation at that Italian place you love for this weekend. Just us. She looked at the flowers, the candles, the elaborate performance of a man who thought apologies were about presentation, not change. That sounds nice, she heard herself say. Because she needed time. Time to plan, time to prepare, time to figure out how to leave a man who had never really loved her. Marcus smiled, satisfied. He had no idea that the woman standing in his kitchen was not the same woman he had married. That woman had died in a dark closet at 2 a.m, holding a burner phone full of lies. The woman who remained was someone new, someone who was done being a supporting character in her own life. Rachel Morgan was finally ready to fight. Diane Collins had lived next door to the Morgans for 4 years, close enough to notice patterns that others might miss. She noticed when Marcus stopped coming home for dinner. She noticed when Rachel stopped tending her small container garden on the back porch. She noticed the way Rachel's smile had dimmed, month by month, like a light, slowly losing power. Diane was 58 years old, a retired nurse, a widow twice over, and a survivor of things she rarely talked about. Her first husband had been charming too. Charming right up until the moment he was not. She recognized the signs in Rachel, the careful way she moved, like someone trying not to take up space. The flinch when a door slammed too loudly. The endless apologies for things that needed no apology. So when Diane saw Rachel sitting in her garden at 7 a.m, still wearing yesterday's clothes, staring at nothing, with red-rimmed eyes, she did not hesitate. She walked over with 2 cups of coffee and sat down without asking. You look like you need to talk, honey. Rachel startled, then tried to smile. I am fine, just tired. Diane sipped her coffee and waited. She had learned long ago that silence was more powerful than questions. It took 3 minutes for Rachel to crack. "My husband is cheating on me," she said it flatly, like reporting the weather. "Has been for years. I found out 3 days ago." Diane nodded slowly. "And what are you going to do about it?" "I do not know." Rachel's voice broke. "I am pregnant. I have no family. Everyone thinks he is perfect. If I leave, I have nothing." Diane set down her coffee and took Rachel's hands in hers. "Let me tell you something," she said quietly. 40 years ago, I was you. Different man, same story. Everyone thought my first husband was wonderful. Deacon at the church. Little league coach. Never raised his voice in public. Rachel looked up, something shifting in her eyes. But at home, Diane continued, he was someone else entirely. Started with words, ended with worse. I stayed for 12 years because I thought that was what good wives did. Because I had 2 kids and no job and nowhere to go. What happened? I left. Diane's voice was steady. One night, I packed a suitcase while he was passed out drunk, put my kids in the car, and drove until I ran out of gas. Ended up in a women's shelter 3 states away. Rachel's hand went to her belly. How did you survive? One day at a time, one meal at a time, one breath at a time. Diane squeezed her hands. And I learned something important. The fear of leaving is almost always worse than the reality of starting over. But I have nothing. No savings, no family, no. You have more than you think. Diane's eyes were fierce. You have a job. You have a brain. You have a baby who needs a mother strong enough to show them what self-respect looks like. And you have me? Rachel blinked. What? I have a spare room, Diane said it matter-of-factly, like she was offering a cup of sugar. It is not much, but it is clean, it is safe, and there is a lock on the door. When you are ready to leave, that room is yours. I cannot. We barely know each other. Diane smiled. And for a moment, Rachel saw the ghost of the frightened young woman she had once been. Honey, I know you better than you think. I have been watching you shrink for 4 years. Watching you apologize for breathing. Watching that light in your eyes get dimmer and dimmer. She leaned forward. Women like us, we recognize each other, and we help each other, because no one else will. Rachel felt something crack open in her chest. Not breaking this time, but opening, like a window letting in air after years of being sealed shut. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for a stranger? Because someone did it for me once. Diane stood up, brushing off her jeans. I would have died in that marriage if a stranger had not opened her door. I am still paying that debt forward 40 years later. She headed back toward her house, then paused. One more thing. I am going to teach you something important. How to hide cash in a tampon box. No man ever looks there. Despite everything, Rachel laughed. It was a small sound, rusty from disuse, but it was real. Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel built her escape plan piece by piece, guided by Diane's quiet wisdom and Maya's practical advice. She photographed every financial document she could find, bank statements, investment accounts, the deed to their house, Marcus's pay stubs. She uploaded everything to a secure cloud drive Maya helped her create. She kept a journal, documenting every interaction with Marcus. The times he came home late, the lies he told, the way his charm flickered off when he thought no one was watching. She met with Patricia Holloway twice, learning things about divorce law that made her head spin. Community property, asset division, the importance of filing first. And through it all, she played the part of the obedient wife. She smiled at Marcus's empty apologies. She accepted his guilt gifts. She let him believe his performance had worked. It was the hardest acting job of her life. But every night, she lay awake, thinking about Diane's spare room, about the lock on the door, about a life where she did not have to apologize for existing. 3 weeks after finding the burner phone, Rachel was ready. She waited until Marcus left for a conference in Chicago. A 3-day trip, plenty of time for her to execute her plan. The morning he left, he kissed her forehead and told her to rest. "Take care of yourself, babe. I will call you tonight." She smiled and said, "I love you." And she did not feel guilty at all, because he had said those same words while texting his mistress. He had made lying an art form. Now it was her turn. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, Rachel moved. She transferred $30,000 from their joint savings to her secret account. Half of the marital assets, her legal right. She packed a suitcase, clothes, documents, prenatal vitamins, the ultrasound photo she kept on her nightstand. She wrote a note and left it on the kitchen counter. "I know about Kennedy and the others. I am done." Then she walked next door, suitcase in hand, and knocked on Diane's door. The older woman opened it, took one look at Rachel's face, and stepped aside. "Welcome home, honey." For the first time in months, Rachel felt like she could breathe. For 3 days, Rachel lived in something close to peace. Diane's spare room was small, just a twin bed and a dresser, and a window that overlooked a garden, overgrown with wildflowers. But it had a lock on the door and clean sheets that smelled like lavender, and Rachel slept better there than she had in her own home for months. She turned off her location services, changed her passwords, forwarded her important mail to a P.O. box Maya had helped her set up. Every precaution the internet recommended for women leaving controlling husbands, she followed. Marcus called 17 times the first day. She did not answer. He left voicemails that cycled through every manipulation tactic she now recognized. Concern at first, then confusion, then anger, then back to tearful pleading. "Baby, please, I do not know what happened. Just tell me you are safe. I know I messed up, but we can work through this. Think about our child. Rachel, this is insane. You cannot just disappear. We are married. If you do not call me back, I am going to file a missing persons report." She saved every message. "Evidence," Patricia said. "You never know what will matter in court." On the third day, Diane made her famous chicken and dumplings, and the three of them, Rachel, Diane, and Maya, who had come over after work, sat around the kitchen table and talked about nothing important. Favorite movies, terrible first dates, the best way to get a baby to sleep. It felt like something Rachel had never had, a family, not bound by blood, but by choice. "This is nice," she said quietly. I forgot what nice felt like. Maya clinked her water glass against Rachel's tea mug. "Get used to it, sister. This is your life now," Diane smiled. "The hard part is over. Now you just have to." She stopped, her head tilted toward the window, where the sound of a car engine had just cut off. "Are you expecting anyone?" she asked Rachel. "No." The doorbell rang. Rachel's heart stopped. She knew, somehow, before Diane even looked through the peephole. She knew the way prey knows when a predator has found their hiding place. Diane turned back with a face carved from stone. "It is Marcus," and he brought police. The next few minutes blurred together in Rachel's memory. Diane opening the door, Marcus pushing past her, his face a mask of wounded concern. 2 uniformed officers behind him, looking uncomfortable. Rachel. Thank God. Marcus reached for her, and she stepped back so fast she nearly tripped. "I have been worried sick." "Why did you leave?" She tried to speak, but another voice cut in, older, sharper, dripping with false sweetness. Linda Morgan stepped through the doorway, dressed impeccably as always, her silver hair perfectly styled. Marcus's mother had never liked Rachel. Too poor, too orphaned, too not good enough for her precious son. Rachel, dear. Linda's smile did not reach her eyes. This has gone far enough. Come home. Officers, Marcus said, his voice cracking with practiced emotion. My pregnant wife left without warning. She took money from our accounts and disappeared. I am afraid she might be having some kind of mental episode. One of the officers, a woman with kind eyes, looked at Rachel. Ma'am, are you here of your own free will? Yes. Rachel's voice came out stronger than she expected. I left my husband because I discovered he has been having multiple affairs throughout our marriage. I have evidence. The officer nodded slowly. This sounds like a civil matter, sir. Your wife is an adult. She is allowed to leave. She took our money, Marcus snapped, the mask slipping. She drained our accounts. I transferred half of our joint savings, my legal right as a spouse. The male officer shifted uncomfortably. Like my partner said, this is a civil matter. You will need to sort this out in family court. But Marcus was not listening. His eyes were fixed on Rachel with an intensity that made her blood run cold. Where have you been staying? He asked softly. Here. It was not really a question. He had found her. All her precautions, all her planning, and he had found her in 3 days. How? She whispered. Linda smiled. We have a private investigator, dear. Did you really think you could hide from us? The officers left eventually, with awkward apologies and suggestions to contact a lawyer. Marcus and Linda stayed longer, making thinly veiled threats dressed up as concern. Think about your baby, Linda said. What kind of mother runs away from her family? You need help, Rachel. Marcus's voice was gentle, reasonable, terrifying. Mental help. I am not angry. I just want you to get better. Through it all, Diane stood beside Rachel like a shield. She said nothing, but her presence was enough. Finally, they left. Marcus paused at the door, turning back one last time. This is not over, Rachel. That baby is mine too, and I will fight for my child. The door closed. Rachel collapsed onto the couch, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. He found me. She could barely get the words out. I did everything right, and he still found me. Diane sat beside her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. He found you today, but you found something more important. What? Proof that you are strong enough to leave. Diane's eyes were fierce. He expected you to crumble. You did not. That matters. But what do I do now? He knows where I am. He is going to. We regroup. Diane's voice was calm. We adapt. We fight smarter. She handed Rachel her phone. Call Patricia. Tell her everything. And Rachel? Yes. Welcome to the war. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in how the system could fail women who left their husbands. Marcus began his harassment campaign immediately. Texts at all hours, calls to her workplace, emails CCing lawyers, and family members Rachel did not even know she had. He showed up at her office twice, making scenes in the lobby until security escorted him out. Her manager, a nervous man who played golf with Marcus at the country club, called Rachel into his office. I think you should take some time off, he said, not meeting her eyes. Just until things settle down. You are asking me to leave because my estranged husband is harassing me. I am suggesting a leave of absence for your own well-being. Rachel packed her desk that afternoon. Maya hugged her in the parking lot and promised to keep her updated on everything. He is taking everything from me, Rachel said numbly. My job, my home, my reputation, no. Maya held her shoulders firmly. He is trying to take everything. There is a difference. You still have choices. You still have us. But the worst blow came 3 days later, in a courtroom that smelled like old coffee and desperation. Marcus had filed an emergency motion. His lawyer, an expensive shark paid for by Linda Morgan, stood before the judge with a folder full of carefully curated evidence. Your Honor. My client's wife abandoned the marital home while 7 months pregnant. She transferred $30,000 without consultation. She has refused to communicate about prenatal care or birth plans. We have serious concerns about her mental stability. Patricia fought back. She presented the burner phone evidence, the hotel receipts, the documentation of Marcus's affairs. But the judge, an older man, who looked at Rachel like she was a hysterical child, was unmoved. I see a marriage in crisis, he said. What I do not see is evidence that Mr. Morgan presents any danger to his unborn child. He granted temporary custody rights to Marcus. After the baby was born, pending evaluation of Rachel's mental fitness, Marcus would have equal access. Rachel sat frozen as the words washed over her. They were going to take her baby because she left, because she told the truth. Maya found her in the courthouse bathroom 20 minutes later, crumpled on the floor, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. They're going to take my baby. They believed him. They think I am crazy. Maya knelt beside her, wrapping her arms around Rachel's shaking shoulders. They ruled today. That does not mean they rule forever. This is one battle. The war is not over. I should have stayed if I had just stayed. No. Maya's voice was fierce. If you had stayed, you would have taught your daughter that abuse is love, that cheating is acceptable, that women do not deserve respect. Is that what you want? Rachel lifted her tear-stained face. No. Then get up. Maya pulled her to her feet. Get up. Wash your face. And get back in the fight, because giving up is not an option. Not for you, and not for that baby. Rachel looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, a pregnant woman with swollen eyes and ruined makeup, and a heart that had been broken so many times she had lost count. But beneath all that, something else. Something that had not been there 6 weeks ago. Strength. She turned on the faucet and began to wash her face. Rachel learned to survive on 3 hours of sleep and endless cups of tea. The days blurred together. Court dates and lawyer meetings, and documenting every interaction with Marcus for the record. Patricia taught her to write everything down. Time, date, what was said, any witnesses. Courts loved paper trails. But the system moved slowly, and Marcus moved fast. He filed motion after motion, each one designed to drain Rachel's resources and break her spirit. Emergency hearings about her mental fitness, demands for psychological evaluations, requests for supervised visitation that had not even been ordered yet. The legal aid clinic could only do so much. Patricia was fighting 5 other cases at the same time, all women like Rachel, all underfunded and overwhelmed. Meanwhile, Marcus played the perfect father to be on social media. Photos of the nursery he was setting up, posts about co-parenting classes, comments from friends and family praising his maturity. I am learning to be a better man, one post read. For my child. No matter what happens with their mother. The comments underneath were a knife to Rachel's chest. Marcus, you are a saint. So glad you are taking the high road. That poor baby is lucky to have you. She wanted to scream. She wanted to post the evidence, the burner phone messages, the lies, the years of betrayal. But Patricia stopped her. Social media courts are not real courts. If you attack him publicly, you look unstable. Let him hang himself with his own rope. So Rachel stayed silent. And the world believed Marcus Morgan was a hero. Then, 8 months into her pregnancy, something unexpected happened. Detective Sarah Brooks called. Mrs. Morgan, I am investigating some financial irregularities at your husband's company. Your name came up in connection with several accounts. I need to ask you some questions. Rachel felt her blood go cold. What kind of irregularities? I cannot discuss details of an ongoing investigation. but I think you might have information that could help us. Would you be willing to meet? The meeting happened at a coffee shop downtown, away from prying eyes. Detective Brooks was in her early 40s, with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor that Rachel found oddly comforting. Your husband has been funneling money through several shell companies, the detective explained. We have been tracking it for months. When you transferred money from your joint account, it triggered some red flags that led us to dig deeper. Rachel stared at her. You mean his affairs are not the only thing he has been hiding? I mean, your husband may be involved in serious financial crimes, and I think he may have been using your name without your knowledge. The detective slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents Rachel had never seen. Account statements, wire transfers, signatures that looked like hers but were not. I did not sign these, she whispered. I know. We had them analyzed. The signatures are forgeries. Rachel's hands were shaking. Why would he do this? To create a fall guy. If the investigation got too close, he could blame you. The naive wife who did not know what she was signing. The words hit Rachel like a physical blow. All those years, she thought he was protecting her. He was setting her up. There is more, Detective Brooks said quietly. We found a life insurance policy in your husband's name, $200,000, taken out 6 months ago. Rachel blinked. Lots of people have life insurance. The beneficiary is Marcus. And the policy is on you. Something cold settled in Rachel's stomach. I do not understand. His search history includes terms like complications during childbirth and postpartum accidents, and how long after death to collect insurance. The coffee shop seemed to spin. Rachel gripped the edge of the table. You think he was going to? She could not finish the sentence. I think we need to take precautions. Detective Brooks leaned forward. I am telling you this because I want you to be careful. Do not be alone with him. Do not let him know you know any of this. And if you have any evidence, anything at all, I need it. Rachel thought about the cloud drive, the photos, the documents she had been collecting for months. I might have something, she said. That night, Rachel sat in Diane's kitchen and cried, not from sadness, from rage. He was going to kill me, she said, the words still unreal. He was going to wait until I had the baby, and then Diane poured her another cup of tea and sat down across from her. But he did not. You found out. You got away. And now you have evidence that can destroy him. I thought finding out about the affairs was the worst thing. I thought I knew how deep his betrayal went. But this? Evil does not announce itself, honey. Diane's voice was gentle but firm. It creeps in slowly. Makes you doubt yourself. Makes you think you are the problem. By the time you see it clearly, you are already in danger. Rachel looked down at her belly, at the child who would be born in a few weeks. I almost raised a baby with a man who was planning to kill me, but you did not. Diane reached across the table and took her hands. You trusted your instincts. You got out. That is not weakness, Rachel. That is strength. The phone rang. Maya's number. Rachel, you need to see this. Kennedy Shaw just called me. She wants to meet. Rachel's heart stuttered. Kennedy, Marcus's mistress. Why? She says she has something you need. Something that could change everything. Rachel looked at Diane, who nodded slowly. Go, the older woman said, but take me with you. Kennedy Shaw lived in a small apartment complex on the edge of town, the kind of place where dreams went to quietly dissolve. Rachel sat in Diane's car, staring at the building, wondering if this was a trap. You do not have to go in. Go in alone, Diane said. No, I need to face her. Then I will be right here if you need me. Rachel walked up 3 flights of stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. She had imagined meeting Kennedy hundreds of times, screaming at her, demanding answers, asking how she could sleep with another woman's husband for 3 years. But when Kennedy opened the door, all of that evaporated. Because Kennedy Shaw looked worse than Rachel did. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her hair was unwashed. She wore sweatpants and an old t-shirt, and she flinched when she saw Rachel standing there. "You came," she whispered. "I was not sure you would." Neither was I. Kennedy stepped back to let her in. The apartment was sparse. A couch, a table, a television that was not turned on, boxes in the corner, half-packed. "I am moving," Kennedy said, noticing Rachel's gaze. "I cannot stay here anymore. Not after what he did." Rachel sat down carefully, her belly making everything awkward now. "What did he do?" Kennedy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "He threw me away. The moment things started getting complicated, he was done. Said I was becoming a liability. 3 years I gave him, and I was a liability." Rachel felt something unexpected. Not sympathy, exactly, but recognition. "He told you his wife did not understand him." Kennedy nodded. "That you were cold, distant, that you had not been intimate in years. We were intimate until I got pregnant, then he stopped touching me." Kennedy's face crumpled. "I am such an idiot." They sat in silence for a moment, two women on opposite sides of the same lie, finally seeing each other clearly. "Why did you call me?" Rachel asked. "Because I found out what he did." Kennedy stood up and walked to a closet, pulling out a cardboard box. What he was planning to do. She set the box on the coffee table between them. "I kept everything, texts, emails, financial records. I thought it was insurance, in case he ever tried to throw me under the bus." That is exactly what he was planning. I know that now. Kennedy opened the box. Rachel saw folders, thumb drives, printed emails. "When I realized he was going to let you take the fall for his fraud, I thought, okay, that is not my problem. But then I found out about the life insurance." Rachel's throat tightened. "You know about that." Kennedy's eyes filled with tears. "I did not know what kind of man he really was. I thought I was in love. I thought he was going to leave you, and we would be together." She wiped her face angrily. "I was stupid, but I am not a monster, and I am not going to help him hurt you." She pushed the box toward Rachel. "Everything is in here. Bank statements, shell company records, emails where he discusses the insurance policy, even a recording from 2 months ago where he talks about how much easier things would be if you were not around." Rachel stared at the box like it contained a bomb, which, in a way, it did. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because when I testified against you in court, I lied." Kennedy's voice broke. "He threatened me, said he had photos from our affair that would destroy my career. I work in finance. If those got out, I would never work again. So you lied to save yourself." "I lied because I was a coward." Kennedy met her eyes. "But I am trying not to be a coward anymore." Rachel looked at the evidence. Months of lies, years of betrayal, and the proof that her husband had been planning something far darker than infidelity. "What do you want in return?" she asked. "Nothing." Kennedy sank onto the couch. "I just want this to be over. I want to stop being the other woman. I want to sleep without wondering if I helped a murderer." The word hung in the air. Murderer. "You need to testify," Rachel said. "For this to mean anything in court, you need to tell the truth." Kennedy was quiet for a long moment. "I know, and it terrifies me. But I cannot keep living like this." She looked at Rachel, and for the first time, Rachel saw something beyond the woman who had slept with her husband. She saw someone just as lost, just as manipulated, just as disposable to Marcus Morgan. "He told me the same things he told you," Kennedy said quietly. "That I was special, that I understood him, that he had never met anyone like me. It was all the same script, just different actresses." Rachel felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, exactly. That would take time, if it came at all, but understanding. The recognition that they had both been played by the same man, victims of the same charming predator. She picked up the box. "Thank you," she said. "I know this does not fix anything between us." Kennedy nodded. "I do not expect it to. I just could not live with myself if I did not try to make it right. Rachel walked to the door, then paused. For what it is worth, she said, I hope you find whatever you're looking for. After all this is over. Kennedy smiled sadly. I hope I do too. Rachel carried the box to the car, where Diane was waiting with the engine running. Well? The older woman asked. Rachel set the box in the back seat. I think we just won the war. The evidence from Kennedy should have been Rachel's salvation. Instead, it became the trigger for the worst week of her life. It started in a courtroom, 3 days after the meeting with Kennedy. Patricia had filed an emergency motion to reopen the custody case based on the new evidence. The same judge who had ruled against Rachel was reviewing the documents, his face unreadable. Rachel sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded over her massive belly. The baby was due in 2 weeks. She had not slept properly in months. Every movement felt like wading through concrete. Marcus sat across the aisle, looking concerned and reasonable, and nothing like a man who had researched killing his pregnant wife. His lawyer, the expensive shark Linda Morgan funded, was on his feet. Your Honor, this evidence is clearly fabricated. My client has been the victim of a coordinated harassment campaign by his estranged wife and her associates. He should not be. Rachel stopped listening. Something was wrong. A pressure in her abdomen that was different from the usual kicks and stretches. She shifted in her seat. The pressure built. Mrs. Morgan. Patricia's voice sounded far away. Are you all right? Rachel looked down. Her water had broken, spreading across the courtroom floor. Oh, God, she whispered. The next hours blurred together. Ambulance, sirens, hospital, faces appearing and disappearing, Patricia holding her hand, Diane's voice saying something reassuring, and pain, endless, crushing pain. The baby is in distress, someone said. We need to do a cesarean now. Rachel remembered signing something, remembered bright lights and the smell of antiseptic, remembered screaming her daughter's name before everything went dark. Emma. She woke up alone. The hospital room was quiet, except for the beeping of monitors. Rachel blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights, her hand moving automatically to her stomach. Flat, empty. Emma! She gasped. Where is my baby? A nurse appeared at her bedside, her face carefully neutral. Mrs. Morgan, your daughter is in the NICU. She was born 5 weeks early and needed some help breathing, but she is stable. Rachel tried to sit up, but pain lanced through her abdomen. I need to see her. The doctor will be in shortly. You need to rest. I need to see my daughter. The nurse hesitated, then nodded. I will have someone bring a wheelchair. They took Rachel to the NICU, a room full of impossible tiny babies in plastic boxes. And there, in the corner, was Emma. She was so small, smaller than Rachel had imagined. Tubes connected hers to machines that beeped and hummed. Her eyes were closed, her fists curled tight. Rachel pressed her hand against the incubator glass. I am here, she whispered. Mommy is here. Behind her, a voice she dreaded. She is beautiful, is she not? Marcus stood in the doorway, dressed in a polo shirt and khakis, looking every inch the devoted father. What are you doing here? Rachel breathed. Visiting my daughter. He walked toward the incubator, standing too close to Rachel. I have been here every day since she was born. The nurses love me. Get away from her. Marcus smiled. The custody order still stands, Rachel. Until the court says otherwise, I have equal rights to our child. You tried to kill me. His smile did not waver. That is a very serious accusation. You might want to be careful making statements like that without proof. I have proof. Something flickered in his eyes, just for a moment. We will see what holds up in court. He turned to leave, then paused. By the way, I moved back into the house while you were recovering, changed the locks, took the car since it is in my name, he shrugged. Just practical stuff. I'm sure you understand. Rachel watched him walk away, her body shaking with rage and helplessness. That night, Diane came to sit with her in the hospital. We need to talk, the older woman said. Some things have happened while you were recovering. Rachel closed her eyes. Tell me. The evidence from Kennedy. Marcus's lawyer filed a motion to have it thrown out, said it was obtained through witness tampering. Patricia is fighting it, but it might not matter. There is more. Diane's voice was gentle. Linda Morgan has been posting on social media photos of herself with Emma, talking about what a wonderful father Marcus is, how she is supporting him through his wife's mental health crisis. Rachel felt something inside her crack. Everyone believes him, she whispered. They always believe him. Not everyone. Diane took her hand. We believe you. Maya believes you. Patricia believes you. And Detective Brooks is still building her case. But it is not enough. It is not over. Diane squeezed her fingers. Listen to me. When I left my first husband, I lost everything. My house, my friends, my reputation. Everyone told me I was crazy. Everyone said I should go back. She paused. I spent 3 months in a shelter with my 2 kids, sharing a room with another woman and her 4 children. I worked 2 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and cried myself to sleep every night for a year. Rachel opened her eyes. But I survived. Diane's voice was fierce. My kids survived. And when my ex finally went too far and ended up in prison, everyone who told me I was crazy suddenly remembered they had always known he was dangerous. Diane stood up, smoothing Rachel's blanket. The truth has a way of coming out. Sometimes it takes longer than we want, but it comes. And when it does, you need to still be standing. Rachel looked at the window, at the lights of the city stretching toward the horizon. I am so tired, she said. I know you are, honey, so rest. Tomorrow we fight again. The women's shelter smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. Rachel sat on a narrow bed in a room she shared with 2 other mothers, Emma sleeping in a donated bassinet beside her. It had been 3 weeks since the hospital. 3 weeks since Marcus had taken her home, her car, and any semblance of her former life. The shelter was the only place she could afford. Patricia had helped her apply. A safe house for women fleeing domestic violence. Anonymous, secure, rock bottom. Rachel had never felt so small. Emma stirred, her tiny face scrunching in the way that meant she would need feeding soon. Rachel lifted her carefully, still marveling at how something so small could feel so heavy in her arms. Hey, sweet girl, she whispered. It is just us again. Emma's eyes fluttered open, dark blue, like Marcus's. Rachel tried not to think about that. Maya visited when she could, bringing groceries and updates from the outside world. Diane came twice a week with home-cooked meals and fierce hugs. Patricia called daily with legal updates that were never quite good enough. The evidence from Kennedy was still being fought over. Marcus's lawyer claimed it was fabricated. The judge was skeptical. The case was at a standstill. Meanwhile, the world believed Marcus Morgan was a saint. She saw the social media posts when she could not help herself. Late at night, when Emma was sleeping and the darkness pressed too close. Marcus holding a teddy bear. Marcus at a parenting class. Marcus with his mother, who smiled like a snake wearing pearls. The comments were always the same. So brave. Such a good father. That poor man. No one commented on the woman he had betrayed. The woman he had tried to destroy. The woman sitting in a shelter with nothing but her baby and her stubborn refusal to give up. One night, around 3 in the morning, Rachel almost broke. Emma had colic. She had been crying for 4 hours straight, and nothing Rachel did helped. The other mothers in the shelter looked at her with sympathy, but also exhaustion. Everyone here had their own nightmares to survive. Rachel walked the hallways, bouncing Emma gently, tears streaming down her own face. "Please," she whispered, "please stop crying. Mommy needs you to stop crying." But Emma did not stop, and Rachel felt something inside her give way. She thought about calling Marcus. The thought came suddenly, shamefully. She could call him. She could apologize. She could go back. Emma would have a nursery instead of a shelter. Rachel would have a bed instead of a cot. She would have health insurance and a car and a life that looked normal from the outside. All she had to do was accept the lies, accept the control, accept that she was worth nothing more than what Marcus decided. Her thumb hovered over her phone. Then she heard her own voice. "Oh, so," from somewhere deep inside. "Is this what you want to teach her? Is this what love looks like?" She looked down at Emma, at her perfect face red from crying, at her tiny fists clenched in fury, at a world she did not understand. Rachel put the phone away. "If I go back," she whispered to her daughter, "you will grow up thinking this is what women deserve, and I cannot do that to you." She kept walking. Emma kept crying, and eventually, around 4:30, they both fell asleep on a donated rocking chair in the corner of the common room. Maya found her there the next morning. "You look terrible," Maya said, handing her a coffee. "Thank you. I feel terrible." Maya sat down beside her, reaching out to stroke Emma's sleeping cheek. "I have news. Diane found Kennedy." Rachel blinked. "What?" "She moved after she gave you that evidence. Went off-grid. We thought Marcus had gotten to her. But Diane has connections. Church ladies, apparently, are very good at finding people." "Is she okay?" "She is scared, but she is ready to testify. For real this time." Rachel felt something flutter in her chest. Hope. Dangerous, fragile hope. What changed? Marcus dumped her completely, told everyone she was a stalker, tried to get her fired. Maya's jaw tightened. She realized what we all realized eventually, that he never loved any of us. We were just tools to him. When? "Patricia is filing a motion today. Emergency hearing, new evidence, new witness." She met Rachel's eyes. "This might be it, Rachel. This might be the end." Rachel looked down at Emma, still sleeping peacefully. "I have thought that before. I know. But this time is different. This time you are not fighting alone." That afternoon, Detective Brooks called. "Mrs. Morgan, I need you to come to the station. There is something you should see." Rachel brought Emma in her carrier, unwilling to leave her daughter anywhere. The detective led them to a conference room where a laptop sat open on the table. "We finally got a warrant for your husband's computer," Detective Brooks said. "His personal laptop, not the work one. What did you find?" The detective pressed play on a video file. Marcus's face filled the screen. He was in what looked like a hotel room, talking to someone off camera. "The insurance is all set up," he said casually. "Once the baby is born, I just have to wait a few months. Make it look like postpartum depression. Everyone knows new mothers struggle. No one will question it." A woman's voice responded. "What about the investigation?" Marcus laughed. "By the time they figure anything out, she will be gone, and I will be the grieving widower. Sole custody, life insurance payout, and all the sympathy in the world." Rachel felt the blood drain from her face. "He was really going to do it," she whispered. Detective Brooks nodded grimly. "This video is from 3 months ago, before you left. Before any of this came out." He paused. "The woman he is talking to is Kennedy Shaw. She recorded this without his knowledge. Kennedy. She claims she did not understand what he was planning until later, that she thought he was just venting. But when she realized, he stopped. She saved the video. Yes, and now it is going to save you." Rachel looked at the frozen image of her husband's face, the man she had loved, the man she had married, the man who had been planning her death while she carried his child. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Detective Brooks said, "we arrest him. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 9 in the morning on a Tuesday. Rachel arrived an hour early, Emma strapped to her chest in a carrier, her sisterhood flanking her on both sides. Diane wore her Sunday best, a navy blue dress she said was for special occasions. Maya had taken the day off work, risking her manager's wrath, because some things mattered more than performance reviews. Patricia carried 2 file boxes of evidence, her face set in a determined lines. "You ready?" Maya asked. "No," Rachel admitted, "but I am going to do it anyway. That is all any of us can do." The courtroom filled slowly. Marcus arrived with his expensive lawyer and his mother, all of them dressed in carefully chosen outfits that screamed respectable family. He saw Rachel and smiled, that charming smile that had fooled her for 6 years. She did not smile back. The judge entered, the same older man who had ruled against her twice before. Rachel's heart sank, but Patricia squeezed her arm. "Trust the evidence, or opinions," the lawyer murmured. "The truth is on our side now." The hearing began, with Patricia presenting the new evidence. Kennedy Shaw's testimony, the video from Marcus's laptop, the life insurance policy, the search history, the financial records showing years of fraud. Kennedy took the stand first, her voice shaking but clear. "I recorded that video because I was scared," she said. Marcus had started talking about how much easier things would be without his wife. I did not understand at first. I thought he just meant divorce. But then he started asking about her medical history, her insurance policies, whether anyone would notice if something happened during childbirth. Marcus's lawyer objected repeatedly, but the judge let Kennedy continue. "I loved him," she said, tears running down her face, "or I thought I did, but I am not a murderer, and I am not going to help one." Detective Brooks testified next, presenting the physical evidence in clinical detail, the forged signatures, the shell companies, the search history that painted a picture of premeditated violence. Mr. Morgan researched postpartum depression and tragic accidents involving new mothers, the detective said. He researched how long one must wait after a spouse's death to collect life insurance without raising suspicions. He researched untraceable methods of harm. The courtroom was silent. Finally, Patricia called Rachel to the stand. "Mrs. Morgan," the lawyer said gently, "can you describe your marriage?" Rachel took a deep breath. "I thought I was happy," she began. "For the first few years, I thought I had finally found someone who loved me. I grew up in foster care. I had never had a real family. Marcus seemed like everything I ever wanted. What changed? I got pregnant, and everything I thought I knew turned out to be a lie." She told the story, the distance, the cruelty, the burner phone, the messages, the discovery that her husband had been cheating since before they were married. She told them about Marcus, blaming her for his affairs, about him calling her hormonal and crazy and too fat to love, about the gaslighting that made her question her own sanity. She told them about running, about the shelter, about the nights she spent crying in a rocking chair while her baby screamed and she wondered if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. And she told them about the evidence that proved Marcus had been planning to kill her. "I thought he was going to break my heart," Rachel said, her voice steady. "I did not know he was planning to stop it completely." Patricia turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the evidence is overwhelming. Mr. Morgan perpetrated years of financial fraud. He engaged in systematic emotional abuse, and he made concrete plans to murder his wife and make it look like a tragic accident." She paused. Mrs. Morgan fled to protect herself and her unborn child. Every action she took was in response to a threat she did not fully understand at the time, but instinctively recognized. She did not abandon her marriage. She escaped a death trap. The judge's face was unreadable. He turned to Marcus's lawyer. Mr. Hartwell, your response. The expensive lawyer stood, smoothing his jacket. He opened his mouth to speak, but Marcus beat him to it. This is ridiculous. He was on his feet, his face flushed with rage. The charming mask had finally cracked. She is lying. They are all lying. That video is fake. Kennedy is a psycho stalker who cannot accept that I ended things. And my wife, he pointed at Rachel. My wife is a mentally ill woman who stole my money, kidnapped my child, and has been running a smear campaign against me for months. Mr. Morgan, the judge's voice was sharp. Sit down. No, I will not sit down. Marcus's voice rose. Do you have any idea who I am? My mother's family has donated more to this courthouse than Mr. Morgan. This is your final warning. You think you have won, Rachel. Marcus's eyes found hers, wild and furious. You think this proves anything. You are nothing. You were nothing when I found you, and you will be nothing when this is. Bailiff. Two court officers moved toward Marcus. His lawyer tried to intervene, but Marcus shoved him aside. You are all going to regret this, he shouted as they grabbed his arms. Every single one of you. I will destroy you. I will. His voice cut off as they forced him from the courtroom. The heavy doors swung shut behind him. Silence. The judge removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes. In my 32 years on the bench, he said slowly, I have seen many things, but I have rarely seen a defendant prove the plaintiff's case more effectively than Mr. Morgan just did. He looked at Rachel. Mrs. Morgan, I owe you an apology. When this case first came before me, I saw an emotional woman making wild accusations. I did not see clearly. I should have. He straightened his papers. Based on the evidence presented, I am granting full custody of the minor child, Emma Morgan, to her mother. The father will have supervised visitation only, pending the outcome of criminal proceeding. All emergency motions filed by Mr. Morgan are denied. He banged his gavel. This court is adjourned. Rachel did not move. She could not move. After months of fighting, of being called crazy and unstable and unfit, after losing everything and nearly losing her life, it was over. Someone was hugging her, Maya. Then Diane, then Patricia, who was not usually a hugger, but seemed to be making an exception. You did it, Maya was saying. You did it. But Rachel shook her head. We did it. Together, she looked down at Emma, sleeping peacefully through the most important moment of her mother's life. We are going to be okay, she whispered. I promise. The apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms in a complex that had seen better days. But it was clean and safe and entirely Rachel's own. She stood at the kitchen counter, chopping vegetables for dinner, while Emma played with blocks on the living room floor. 18 months old now, her daughter was fearless, stubborn, and constantly in motion. Rachel's phone buzzed. A text from Maya, still on for dinner Friday. The twins are dying to see Emma, she smiled and typed back. Would not miss it. Bringing wine. The past year and a half had been the hardest of Rachel's life, rebuilding from nothing, finding a new job, learning to be a single mother, processing the trauma of everything she had survived, but also the best. Marcus had been convicted of fraud and conspiracy charges. The murder plans were harder to prosecute, thankfully never put into action, but the financial crimes were enough. He would be in prison for 8 to 12 years. Linda Morgan had been implicated in the cover-up and was facing her own legal troubles. The expensive lawyers, who once terrified Rachel, now sent carefully worded settlement offers that Patricia gleefully rejected. Kennedy Shaw had moved to another state, started over, found a therapist who specialized in abusive relationships. She and Rachel did not stay in touch, but they had exchanged one final message. Thank you for not destroying me, Kennedy wrote. Thank you for letting me help fix what I broke. Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth, Rachel replied. I hope you find what you are looking for. The sisterhood remained. Diane still lived next door, though Rachel was technically her tenant now, renting the small apartment above her garage. Sunday dinners at Diane's kitchen table had become sacred. 3 generations of women who had chosen each other as family. Maya had gotten promoted at work, partly because Rachel was no longer there to compete with her, she joked. Their friendship had deepened into something unbreakable, forged in the fire of shared struggle. Patricia had taken on Rachel's case pro bono by the end, refusing to bill her for hundreds of hours of work. When Rachel protested, the lawyer shrugged. Consider it my investment in your future. Someday you will help another woman the way I helped you. That is how we keep the chain going. Rachel thought about that often. The chain, the way women passed survival to each other, generation after generation, kindness repaying kindness across decades. She had started writing about her experience. A blog at first, anonymous posts about leaving an abusive marriage and rebuilding from nothing. The responses had been overwhelming. Hundreds of women saying me too, and how did you know? And I thought I was alone. She was not a writer. Not really. But she had learned that telling the truth was a skill like any other. And there were so many women who needed to hear that survival was possible. Mama, Emma said, toddling over with a block clutched in her fist. Up! Rachel scooped her daughter onto her hip, pressing a kiss to her soft hair. What do you have there, sweet girl? Emma held up the block proudly. It was green. Green, Rachel confirmed. Good job. Emma grinned, showing 4 tiny teeth. Someone knocked at the door. Rachel set Emma down and went to answer it. Diane stood on the porch, holding a casserole dish. Chicken and dumplings, she announced. I made too much. Again. Rachel laughed. You always make too much. It is a gift. They sat together at Rachel's small kitchen table while Emma ate mashed vegetables and made a mess of her high chair. The conversation wandered, as it always did, from Diane's garden to Rachel's work to the latest gossip from Maya's dating life. She went out with a man who brought his mother on the date. Diane reported gleefully. His actual mother. No, hand to God. Maya said she spent 2 hours listening to this woman critique her outfit choices. Rachel nearly choked on her tea. Poor Maya. Poor Maya, nothing. She got a free dinner and a story she will tell for years. They laughed. The easy laughter of women who had earned their joy through suffering. Later, after Diane had gone home and Emma was asleep in her crib, Rachel sat by the window and looked out at the night sky. She thought about the woman she had been 2 years ago, the woman who apologized for existing, who shrank to make others comfortable, who believed love meant sacrifice and suffering and the slow erasure of self. That woman was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who knew her worth, someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side, someone who had built a family not from blood, but from choice. She was not unbroken. The scars remained, would always remain. Some nights she still woke from nightmares of Marcus's voice, his accusations, his carefully worded cruelties. But she was alive, her daughter was safe, and she had learned the most important lesson of her life. You cannot wait for someone to save you. You have to save yourself. And then, when you are strong enough, you help save others. Rachel pulled out her laptop and opened her blog. She began to type. To every woman who stayed too long. To every woman who left too late. To every woman who is still finding her way out. This is for you. You are not crazy. You are not alone, and you deserve so much better than what you have been taught to accept. I know because I was you. I thought I was trapped. I thought I had no options. I thought the man I loved was the only thing standing between me and oblivion. I was wrong. The truth is, you already have everything you need to survive. The courage is already inside you. The strength is already there. You just have to find it. And I promise you, when you do, you will discover you were never as weak as they told you. You are always the hero of your own story. You just did not know it yet. She saved the post, closed the laptop, and went to check on her daughter. Emma slept peacefully, one tiny hand curled beneath her chin. Rachel reached into the crib and gently stroked her hair. "You are going to grow up knowing what love really looks like," she whispered. "I promise you that." The moon hung full outside the window, casting silver light across the small room. Rachel Morgan had lost everything: her marriage, her money, her faith in the man she once loved. But she had gained something far more valuable: herself. And as she stood there in the quiet of the night, watching her daughter sleep, she finally understood what Diane had told her all those months ago. The truth has a way of coming out. Sometimes it takes longer than we want, but it comes. And when it does, the only thing that matters is that you are still standing. Rachel was still standing, and she was never going to apologize for that again. If Rachel's story touched something in your heart today, do me one small favor. Hit that like button so more women can find this message when they need it most. Drop a comment below. Tell me your thoughts, or simply write, "I stayed," if you understand what she went through. Your words might be exactly what another woman needs to read tonight. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because we tell stories like this every week. Stories about women who found their strength when the world told them they had none. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening until the end. Now let us begin Rachel's story from the very first moment her world shattered. Closing disclaimer. Before you go, I want you to know something important. This story is a work of fiction. The characters, events, and situations are not based on real individuals or actual cases. However, the emotions are real. The struggles are real, and the lessons are meant for anyone who has ever felt trapped, manipulated, or alone. This content was carefully researched, thoughtfully constructed, and manually edited by our team to bring genuine meaning and valuable life lessons to our audience. We do not use shortcuts. We do not copy. Every word is crafted with intention because you deserve stories that respect your time and speak to your heart. If this story helped you in any way, we have done our job. Thank you for being part of this community. Take care of yourself. And remember, you are already braver than you know.